Standing by.
Okay, you're going to see it at the top of your screen where YouTube is live.
I see.
Okay, so one moment and you'll see it.
I've got meeting is now streaming.
Yes.
So assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome again to another session of Not Juz Talk. I'm your host Micheal Hameen, and we're live streaming with YouTube. I'm glad you were able to join us this evening. This is a very special uh, occasion for me. I found out that what I wanted to present this this evening is artificial intelligence generated, and there's a lot of that going on, and the need for us to be aware of this type of generation of information that is not directly sourced from the individual who we hear speaking and sharing. So Sister Manira is going to help me to share this presentation. And if you will, Sister Manira, would you start the presentation?
Yes.
It's really. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this particular voice and image.
Okay, are you seeing it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll press play.
Delivered by someone who has stared empire in the face and refused to blink. My name is Ibrahim Traoré, and I'm speaking to you from Burkina Faso, but my words carry the weight of an entire awakening continent. I've seen governments fall, witnessed the machinery of oppression from the inside, and watched as ordinary people transform themselves into unstoppable forces of change. Today, I'm going to share with you secrets that those in power never wanted you to discover. But first, let me ask you something that will haunt you. What if I told you that everything you've been conditioned to believe about your limitations, your history, and your potential is not just wrong, but deliberately designed to keep you powerless? Brothers and sisters in Black America, I don't speak to you as some distant observer commenting on your struggle from afar. I speak to you as someone who recognizes the identical fire burning in your eyes, the same fire I see in the eyes of every African who has decided that enough is enough. I know this fire because it burns in my chest too, ignited by the same injustices, fueled by the same dreams of true freedom. You might wonder what gives me the authority to address you with such boldness. Let me tell you what I've witnessed. I've seen how global power structures operate when they think no one is watching. I've observed their board meetings, their private communications, their strategic plans that treat entire populations like chess pieces on their game board. I've watched them orchestrate conflicts, manipulate currencies, and orchestrate the rise and fall of leaders across Africa. But more importantly, I've seen what happens when people who have been told they are nothing finally remember they are everything. Our pain may wear different costumes across different continents. Police brutality in your cities, economic colonization in our villages, educational apartheid in your schools, resource theft in our lands. But make no mistake, it flows from the same poisoned well. The oppression, the systematic theft, the calculated humiliation.
Okay. I see that I'm kind of messing around with the dials, Manera. And what I'm finding is you know but I stopped it to see whether or not I was able to manipulate it on my own without Manira's help. But what I wanted to share is that the 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 spirit of the times that that we see going on, where Africa is going through a dynamic change process. And even though the words that you heard from the image of President Traore is artificially generated, AI, artificial intelligence generated, uh, the language that is being shared is a language that represents a real spirit of change that's taking place in not only Africa but also America. Uh, there are very unsettling things taking place in America with this new administration, President Trump. And what many are observing and acknowledging is there's a move to dismantle the American government, uh, the American government, dismantling the institutions of the certain cabinet positions. The ones that are in those positions are making choices according to a plan that will make the American governmental system as it is today ineffective. And it's very unsettling. And rather than complain about it, I ask the question: Well, folks, what do we do about it? How do we protect ourselves from what we're seeing taking place and the discomfort and pain that it represents to us now and in the future? Coming, because it's an ongoing process that's taking place. So I wanted to share President Traore's artificially generated comments to Black America because uh, in that presentation he's showing that we have a common area of interest in terms of not only our surviving but our thriving as a group. And it's been thousands of years since African Americans, well, since the Africans have been uh, shown and respected in the light of the true accomplishments. There's been a mythological narrative to place us in an inferior position and invite us to act out in that inferior position established for us. And this has been ongoing, since the days of chattel slavery and the environment created to make us dysfunctional as a group and to serve the interests of other people. This has been an ongoing process. And, we have people that gaslight us and say, oh, poo poo, that was the past and blah, 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 blah. But I've got just walking around since, but I listen to people that are smarter than me, and they show a connection between that early process and how it has shaped events even up until today, 2025, in terms of how we're seen in the public. It's no accident that this Karen phenomenon, where people try to say that, Black folks, what are you doing? Why are you here? You know, that's the results of a conditioning in terms of European Americans and their coming up in an environment where any Caucasian could manage the the movements of a Black person, you know. And so it continues today. Um, and it's gotten to a point of someone has their their mic open, and I'm getting feedback. If everyone will just close their mics for right now. Thank you. Yes, so I appreciate you all being here. I guess basically I don't have a guest. And if you would like to join in and share your reflections or thoughts, we're making this an open mic Thursday with Not Just Talk. And I'm your host, Micheal Hameen. So if you're on the phone, you can *9 and then *6 to unmute yourself. If you're on your computer, you can hit the raise your hand or the reactions where you can raise your hand and be recognized. But we'd like to hear from you. Oftentimes we have the audience in listening mode, but I'm really looking forward to where we'll have more engagement, more participation in terms of sharing ideas, because when we have more than just the host sharing ideas, it creates a language environment that stimulates us to reason together, and come up with solutions. Like for instance, it's a no-brainer for us to understand, and that was the nature of us establishing Not Just Talk as a program. We've got to have sober conversations with one another in our families. We've got to have sober conversations in our communities. We need to meet. We need to meet to have these conversations. We can meet on Zoom and other platforms, or we can meet in person at the libraries. We don't just have to necessarily meet at the mosque or the masjid. We can meet and discuss what we're doing, what we see to do, the things that are challenging us in terms of doing what we need to do. We have to have these conversations. And if we don't, it's to our own detriment. I'm of the opinion that men in particular, we need to meet. And when we meet by ourselves, it establishes a certain dynamic uh, in terms of man talk. It's different. We're different when we're engaged in a mixed company situation. And I'm also suggesting that the women do the same thing, that women meet to see how they can contribute. And I'm particularly inviting the audiences with the insight that Imam Wardi Muhammad has given us to establish ourselves as resourceful, educated professionals. And that's not just engineers and doctors and lawyers, but carpenters and plumbers who do this work professionally, homemakers who go about establishing the home environment. There was a time when we had home economics, and that educational process created insights as a science of establishing the home environment. We don't have that now. But these are the kind of suggestions that I'm looking at in terms of us uh, engaging what's coming down the pipe, engaging the changes that we see taking place in the American environment. So if anyone has a comment or reflection that they would like to make, we welcome you. Again, this is Not Just Talk, AM 360 platform on Zoom, and we're live streaming with the YouTube audience joining us. Kareem Hamid, welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow.
Okay,
Wa alaikum assalam.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Um, you know what? No, boy. Yeah, the world has moved into and toward universality. The paradigm has shifted from nationalism to globalism. And now the human family can speak to each other in real time, can share information with each other in real time, globally, globally. Uh, so the national interest has its problems, but the understanding that the human being is one, the human family is one, and we are at the the front door of that oneness. And we know the shaitan, the Satan, is definitely against the human beings seeing themselves as one, the oneness. What we are experiencing here in the United States is what have been offered in other countries. There are a lot of countries that have far right political movements, and they are vying for leadership over certain countries. When I say far right, I hope we understand what I mean when I say far right. Anti-human, anti-human. And the idea is to keep the human being separated, keep them divided, so that they never come into oneness as a species. So this was attempted in France. The United Kingdom is confronted with it, and other countries. It's not just the United States. But these marching orders are coming from somewhere. They're coming from somewhere. And but I'm going to say exactly what it is. It is the thought processes of Satan, of Satan. I heard of that, yeah, that this regime is trying to legalize segregation once more. There's a small group here in Arkansas, nowhere in Missouri, and Arkansas, that are trying to erect sundown time, white on Caucasian only. They're in the Ozark region here in Missouri, which is a rural area with forests and trees and all of that. They're starting from the ground up. But it's not just happening in the United States. This is a global movement. But I have heard Caucasians respond to that. They totally reject the idea of returning back to segregation. I have heard them use very strong language, and that we're not going back. And I'm not concerned if a small group of radical nuts want a little small village somewhere in the hills somewhere that is just whites only. I have no good. Stay among yourselves. as the world moves forward, as the human being moves forward. I hope we see it as that this is a global movement. President Trump doesn't have the intellect to orchestrate what we are seeing taking place in the United States. He has the Heritage Foundation, a large, rich foundation that have international reach, are the authors of the book, The 25. But they aren't the source of it. They are receiving orders also. So we want to push inclusion. We want to come together as human beings and push forward the idea of Tawheed, oneness of humanity. So that is what's taking place. Now, I'm for solution, seeing that more and more Caucasians are pushing against this move, many of them, and they are apologizing for having made a mistake of voting along selfish reasons, selfish votes. And they are feeling the negative policies affecting them. And they are apologizing to the African American community that they made the biggest mistake of their lives. And they regret their vote. They regret this move that they played a part in voting for someone like Donald Trump. So Caucasians we aren't the only ones that's against this. The Caucasian community have stood up and they're rallying also that we will not go back. We will not go backwards. So when I say I'm looking for solutions, is that I know this regime was voted into office. They were voted into office. And if that process is, if the election was held today, they would definitely put him out of office, him and those with him out of office. Because even those that voted for him are truly upset. They see that they were used, they were duped. They feel ashamed, and many of them are coming, they're crying. So I'm looking forward, inshallah, to the midterm elections. This process that brought this regime to the fore, that same process is still offered, elections, fair elections, inshallah, then we have a chance of gaining rational, common sense seats in the halls of Congress and in the Senate. No laws can be passed without their approval. So I'm encouraging everyone, vote in the midterm elections. But this is an international movement, Mike. In Hungary, they are faced now with a autocratic, authoritarian leader. So this is a world movement. The human being is standing up now. That we're all one. And Allah it is Almighty God, Allah, that have shifted the human being to the platform of oneness. So I'll stop right there, my brother.
Thank you, Kareem. Anyone else like to share? And keep in mind, we need suggestions, in terms of how we should be operating. In the Quran, it speaks about a time of noise and clamor. And we've seen how over the last decade or more, how the language, in the society is a language, the talking heads, be afraid of this and fear the other. Well, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And it doesn't help us. I was just listening to this commentator, Shahid Belson or Bolson. Uh, he was talking about how uh, in the discourse, in the marketplace of arguments, there are those who are aware of triggering emotionality in the conversation because they don't really want the the light of the intellect to engage into the conversations dealing with where we are and how we should proceed into the future as citizens in America specifically. And this commentator was saying it's a strategy because um, those who are moving the social life in a particular direction because of their money and their influence, they don't want rational conversations where the intellect is stimulated to think about problem solving, solution oriented conversations. That's not what they want us to engage in fear conversations and venting, just letting our emotions come out without regulating them in terms of being thoughtful. This is what has been going on for decades. This invitation to the public to behave a certain way based upon the influences in the social life, and much of those influences are uh, retarding. They in effect diminish our ability to express the excellence that God has put in us. And bottom line for me and many others, we are aware that the Creator didn't just step back and leave the creation to man's devices after he brought the world and the human family into being. The Creator has always been engaged in uh, a process utilizing our freedom of choice, our free will, as the impetus for human progress and overcoming problems of savagery and violence. AM 360, I don't know who you are, but I see your hand is up. Please go ahead. Is this Manira? Yes, okay. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Alaikum assalam.
It is my prayer that we remain collectively, everyone remains calm through all periods of panic because these things are being done. They're inflammatory in nature to spark an emotional response from those whom they are sending this aggression to. And that's the last thing that we should do. Is respond emotionally and take the bait because a lot of them want a reason I once saw a report. I'm going to try and find that report that I saw, how uh, much ammunition has just been stockpiled by people. And they're looking to use it. So I pray that we don't take the bait. And they forget that in a situation where all minorities collectively together in this country, they are outnumbered in numbers, but we are outnumbered in ammunition. It's not a
Yeah,
win.
yeah,
It's not a win for either side. And death and destruction, we've seen enough of that. We see how people are willing to destroy even their own selves. You know, it's just like Imam Kareem said, Shaitan has made wrong seem right, fair seeming in
that's
the
right.
eyes of
Yes.
everyone. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Manira. Yes, there are those um, that are manipulating. You made me think of a presentation by Roland Martin, and I saw the seriousness of this presentation. He gave three incidences where there were Caucasian males who were in the midst of African American people. They put themselves in the midst of African American people and began to use the N word and be very insulting, knowing that they would get some type of response, hopefully a physical response, that they would be attacked. And that this attack, they would kind of like offering themselves up as like sacrificial lambs to trigger a conflict between black and white, a physical conflict between black and white. And if it rose to the level of a large statewide and countrywide situation, that would trigger a response from the government to go into martial law, to suspend the foundational constitutional government and bring about martial law, which means that the uh, the operators of the physical, pardon me, federal government, that they would maintain, quote unquote, law and order. They would bring about a physical and forceful uh, uh, quelling of the black and white conflict. And by doing so, we no longer have the constitutional frame of government. We would no longer be operating as a republic, but we would be operating under martial law. And there are others who are commenting on this. I listen to different spaces on YouTube and other places, and there are people that are, like I said, I've got walking around sense, but there are people that, I'm listening to Richard Wolff. He's an economist, and he's talking. He's discussing the movement under this administration for dismantling the what he calls the American empire. And when you see how Africa is responding to President Traore of Burkina Faso, and the call for unity and the call for throwing off neo-colonial um, entities, France in particular, but the United States has involvement there as well. And in my introduction to President Traore, uh, I came to see where, quote unquote, Muslim extremists are being paid to destabilize governments like Burkina Faso. You have Muslims who are being paid to raid and to cause instability in these various African countries. Uh, so it's a organized attempt to maintain a certain type of order for these empires, these Western empires, because they have established for hundreds of years these bad business deals where they take the resources, the gold and the other uh, elements in the land and other resources, and they take them at a very cheap price, and then they utilize these mineral and other resources to further advance their future as Western governments. And so it's as though a light has come on, and it's not a new light, but every time the light comes on in the past, uh, movements to assassinate those light bringers uh, takes place. But now we have the world watching. We didn't have the type of immediate connections that we have today with the media and the internet. And so this young man, this young African leader, he has had nearly 30 attempts on his life, and it's remarkable. In a time with less light being shown, perhaps he would have been done away uh, with earlier attempts on his life. But it appears that Providence or the Creator is protecting him, and the language that he's presenting in terms of exposing these bad business deals in Africa, but also exposing bad African governments who are being paid to suppress and oppress their own people. So I'll stop with that. Anyone else care to make a comment?
Yes, I found the article.
Yes.
This was as of 2020. It says Americans buy between 8 and 15 billion rounds of ammunition annually. There are 80 to 100 million gun owners in the country. So if you assume possession based on sales alone, the average American possesses between 80 and 150 rounds of ammunition each. That was in 2020. African Americans, is a luxury for us to invest in ammunition. You know, we don't have that kind of money to put towards it, but there are people who are stockpiling ammunition. So, in light of that, we have to work smarter.
Yes. All
If
right.
I may add this,
Yes, sir. Come on in.
I'm grateful that Manira shared the idea of not responding emotionally. It is known across this country that there are forces trying to bait us into an emotional, physical response.
Yes.
And we are not responding emotionally. People somewhat criticized because there is a movement to boycott the large corporate structure that is running this country. Let me say that again. To boycott the large corporate platform that is orchestrating all of this. We have to, or there's an idea to punish them. Don't spend your money with them. Walmart, Amazon, Target, all of them. We know that in this country here, Citizens United, it was a movement that included corporations as an individual, and that their funding of the political system is called free speech.
Mm.
And when the politician, it cost him so much to run, they contribute to him. When he accepts the campaign contribution, he becomes their boy. He becomes their boy. Now, if we would study the Gilded Age in the late 1800s and into the early 19th century, and see what was the life like for common people. They were slaves. They were slaves. And people organized themselves to move against the upper crust, the so-called hierarchy. There was almost a threat of revolution in this country during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression. And I can't think of her name, but there was a female that spoke with Franklin Roosevelt, which was president at that time. I mean, unemployment was catastrophic. And she suggested to him, you should borrow from the idea of socialism. You must create income for your citizens. That's why we have, listen to this, Social Security now. It didn't exist back then.
Yes.
That's why we have what they call the welfare system. That there is a social contract between the governed and those who govern. The Gilded Age, the people of that period, they didn't like that. Although it was implemented, they didn't like that. And they are deconstructing what was called the New Deal. They're deconstructing it. And we know we have oligarchs. So how do we respond to them? Be very selective as to where you spend your money.
I agree.
because that is what motivates them. Satan is greedy. Greed. Get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is their mantra. So we are not responding emotionally with all of the attacks, vocal attacks, and policy attacks on the African American in this country. The things that they have done, they were expecting an emotional, violent response, and the system devastated. Then the powers that be will declare martial law. And under martial law, the Constitution is suspended. Elections are suspended also. Now, take a look at what's happening to the food producers in this country, the farmers. Take a look at what's happening at Tyson Foods. They had to, because their labor has been captured and sent to foreign countries. The farmers are losing their large farms. The produce is rotting in the fields. And they are upset. And they don't look like me. This is not an ethnic struggle. This is a human struggle.
That's right.
And if we continue to use our intellect, they are with us, whether we realize it or not. So they're not just coming at the African American. The people that actually voted MAGA, that voted for them, are really upset. They're angry. They're dissatisfied. And they want to return back to some normal, some accountability, some sense of order. Well, my statement to them, you voted out of selfishness.
That's true.
You thought that the pain would only hit those that he was pointing at. But now you see, they see you as ends. A lot of government workers have lost their jobs. A lot of people with high incomes have lost their jobs. So the discontent is from the citizens of this country. I don't care what color you are. When you do not have adequate access to proper medical care, and your child has a life-debilitating ill, you're very upset. But you voted out of selfishness. You thought it would happen. Matter of fact, a lot of Hispanics voted, we are for Trump. And they thought that it didn't mean it. But we have secret police, snatching people off of the streets, going into school, going into buildings, kidnapping people. So I'm hoping, well, I know there's great unrest, but I hope it does not move into a physical violence. They have been predicting a race war in this country, but we aren't going. Many Caucasians are not going. They see how they're trying to bait us. So I'm hoping that the political structure stays intact long enough to hold the midterm elections. They are so out of favor, Republicans, that when they try to hold a town hall, they aren't even going to their town hall meetings. There are Democratic politicians attending those scheduled Republican town hall meetings, and they are getting standing ovation. And we've even got a problem with them.
Imam Kareem, Sister Manira
Yes,
would
sir.
like to come in. Manira,
Yeah.
come on in.
It's very important. People think that don't count, but it's extremely important for everyone to get out and vote, especially with all the redistricting tricks that have been put into place. Every single vote counts, and check your credentials and everything prior to the election to make sure you're registered and on the books correctly, so that your vote can't be challenged. But everyone has to vote. It's crucial. You know, we have to vote as if our life and our country depends on it. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And I'd like to add to the to this perception. Um, we've got to engage the political process differently. Um, many years ago, a member, I lived in Birmingham, and a member, an older member of the community, who was a part of the Nation of Islam under Elijah Muhammad. At that time, the Nation of Islam did not vote. We were told not to engage the political process in terms of voting. But this gentleman told me, he said, "Well, brother, I know what we were told, but I voted anyway." Now this is in Alabama. He said, "My intention was to vote for the one that could hurt us the least. My intention was to vote in a way where I saw that there was one who was worse than the other." So, with that kind of focus in mind, we need to rethink. Instead of looking for perfection, we need to look pragmatically in terms of the ones that can hurt us the least in politics. So when you vote someone out who's got all of this money and resources because of the way that he is uh, being told by the lobbyists how he should vote and the kind of things that he should give his attention to. Okay, when you this person has been in for a while. When you bring in someone new, understand that they are less connected. They're not as connected as the previous politician. So God willing, you'll be more able, if they don't give you what you want, you can more readily get them out of office. And a lot of people were tricked, and I'm talking about, Muslims and others who saw President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris in terms of the support for Israel, and that was an issue. Well, look at what you got with President Trump. He's talking about making a resort area, a pleasure area out of the ashes of the destruction of the Gaza, the Gaza, uh, uh, those who are living in Gaza. So we've got to listen to those who are more sober minded and less emotional in terms of these critical issues that we're faced with. We have to have it, or will be big losers. It'll be to our own detriment that we don't listen to those who have a more practical and pragmatic view of how to move. Uh, I saw a problem, and I think others saw a problem when the Supreme Court, as Imam Kareem mentioned, the Supreme Court made corporations uh, the corporation status as individual status. That was fishy on its face because it didn't really make sense. It wasn't logical that you make a corporate entity uh, give them the status of an individual in terms of the voting process. That was fishy right there, but there was no large clamor about that decision. And so we have to understand that we have our life in our own hands. Nobody's coming to save you. You have to save yourself, and you have to make better decisions. You need to make better decisions, less emotional decisions, decisions that are more practical in terms of survival. And hopefully that, with that kind of focus and work, we'll come to, with the help of the Creator, how we can thrive again. When I say again, in terms of the environment giving us the freedom to expand our life and our future. We have to engage with our young people, our children, and put on their minds a sense of obligation to make the community life better, to make the social life better, to be engaged, to not withdraw. Oftentimes, there's a tendency in the human being to resist or move away from conflict, and you want peace. Well, in Al Islam, the language of the guidance is that we can't be like sheep. We have to fight for peace. We have to speak out for peace. And if we're unable to fight physically, then we have to speak out or at least hate the disruptors in our hearts. And another thing, we've heard the name of Satan and Shaitan mentioned, the devil mentioned in a lot of these conversations. Well, the devil doesn't have a tail and move around with a pitchfork. The devil has devilishment has certain qualities: arrogance, a lack of empathy, a lack of respect for other human beings, selfishness. This is what identifies devil, shaitan, an attempt to keep common human life from regulating itself, from managing itself, from growing the human life of the common man and woman towards excellence. This is what the devil does not want. The devil wants to manage the lives of individuals, want to treat them like cattle, like some type of livestock, and manage them. And then there are those, that's one element of devilish men. Another area of devilishment is the focus in terms of resisting any kind of order, resisting any kind of discipline and self-discipline, and the management of the life towards excellence, towards improvement and advantage. Decadence. The people that no holds barred. They don't want any controls over the life. That's another form of devil, of Satan. And these two forces are in opposition, and those human beings, those of us, we're in the middle. And these forces, they're not a minority. Pardon me, they're not a majority force. They're actually a minority. But their appeal and their strategies are to try to uh, cause us to not respond in a way to protect our souls, to protect our human interests. So the beat goes on.
Yes, Michael.
Yes, sir.
I'm quite sure we are aware of a huge power shift that have taken place.
Yes.
Whether it'll be successful or not, we don't know. Allah knows. But the strongest lobby in this country, the strongest lobby in this country that control our politicians is APAC. APAC stands for the American Israeli Political Action Committee. And they are the ones that fund politicians. They will run a person against you and fund them, fund their campaign. So APAC has had a lot of power in this country. But look at what has happened. New York City has more Jewish influence than any other place I can think of other than Jerusalem and Israel, but New York City has a large Jewish community. And here's a young Muslim man, a young Muslim, very intelligent, very rational. He is running for the mayor of New York City. And he actually went out in the streets. He met with people and shared his common sense vision. He won the Democratic primary for mayor of New York. Don't we know that a lot of people that we call Jews, they voted for him? Huh? They was backing, I can't think of the ex-governor, Cuomo. APAC was supporting him. And Cuomo did not win the primary. That lets me know that a lot of the Jews in New York voted for this young Muslim man. That threatens the grip. That threatens the grip that APAC has on the political system in this country. And you can bet they are going to try to come after him. They are strong, like very strong, influential lobby. But their influence has been threatened. Their influence has been weakened now. So I hope that we register that and know that there is, as I said, a paradigm shift. Allah is moving us from nationhood to universality, universal concept. And the shaitan does not want that. But Allah had moved the human being whereby we're in touch with each other globally. Globally now. Never have that ever existed until recently. And it only occurs because it was Allah's will. And they are pushing against universality, oneness, globalism. And I know they will lose because Allah has said that as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. The human being started out as one, and it shall return back to that unity. There is no stopping it. No one can thwart or stop Almighty God's will for the human family. I think we've lost Michael Manera. I don't see him on the screen here.
I'm still here. I just took myself out, took my video out for a moment. Yeah,
Now,
but yeah, you're right, Imam Kareem, and it's specifically this global focus is specifically focusing on our common humanity, that we're not to see ourselves just in ethnic or national focus, but we're to see ourselves in terms of the common humanity, and the common humanity uniting towards and for the common good of of our human existence. That there are those. I'm thinking of Dr. Yunus. I think it's Yunus Muhammad. Uh, he's he was a social activist, a business activist who believed that poverty could be eliminated. That if we give our attention to the nature of how poverty exists, that we can get rid of it. And he invested his monies into uh, attempting to bring that about. Uh, he was confined in his government. I forget the name of the government, but he was brought out of his house arrest or whatever the restrictions were, and he was made the leader of the government uh, by a popular movement in his country. And again, I can't remember, but there's several books that he has produced, and he's won, I believe, Nobel prizes for his innovative ideas. You can Google. Yunus is his first name. I think it's Muhammad, but I'm not sure. But
micro banking system, a micro banking system.
that's it. That's it. What is it? You remember his name?
And I know his last name is Yunus.
Okay, Muhammad Yunus, maybe.
Yes, yes. And
Okay,
he's from out of Pakistan.
okay. Alhamdulillah. Well, anyway, there are people like him. And I remember Imam Muhammad repeating the quote of this uh, what do you call them? Anthropologists, Margaret Mead, very well known anthropologist. She's passed away now, but she made a comment in terms of human progress, and that human progress has never been done by the many, it's always a few. And we see that when we look at history, in fact, our own history here in America, and how the American life has evolved, you know, and how it developed. I, I'm amazed at how the constitutional framework of government and the Declaration of Independence were brought into being to create the United States of America, in spite of the fact that those leaders, those founding leaders, had slaves themselves and were not respecting the common humanity. They owned slaves and they kept them in this chattel slave system. And it's just amazing to me. Now, I've heard voices from intellectuals, African American intellectuals, call the American experience uh, a criminal enterprise. Well, I don't accept that. What I do accept is that there's America the beautiful and there's America the ugly. I do accept that. And I see in the development of the United States of America an inspired process that God is overseeing. Even the fact that we as African Americans, our people were kept in chattel slavery for hundreds of years. I see that a part of God's guidance, thanks to the insights of my mentor and my leader, Imam Worthy Muhammad, saying that God was involved in that process and that he was producing a vessel that could potentially carry the help that humanity needed, not only here in America but in the world, by passing the test of oppression and violence, and still holding on to the idea of Almighty God, the Creator, even when there were no signs of help from that Creator in view. Still holding on, much like how Job is presented to us in the Holy Bible. The prophet Job, Ayub, called in the Quran, and his maintaining of faith in spite of the trials and the tribulations that he had experienced. And I see African Americans in that light. And when it comes to what's called the diaspora of those people from Africa, of African descent, whether it be in South America or wherever in the world, we see that the African Americans have greater, in terms of the group, more education, more material resources, in spite of the suffering of the group for hundreds of years that the Creator has brought us out. Yes, there's a need for an attitude adjustment because we're not seeing things correctly. And it's never going to be the majority of us that help to make the healthy changes. There's always going to be the few. So those listening to this program, Not Juz Talk, uh, I believe you're part of that minority that want to actively participate in making change for the better. All praises due to Allah. Uh, this is a special weekend coming up, and the program normally goes until 10 o'clock, but I'm going to cut it short. If you want to make a comment, we invite you to do so now. And I'm going to conclude and invite you to come back next Thursday, same time, same station, 8 o'clock Eastern, and we'll engage. And God willing, we'll have a guest next week that will help us to see how we can better involve ourselves in making changes here in America for the better and maintaining the American life. Uh, so, are there any other comments that you'd like to make before we close out?
Yes, I want to float this idea. I don't
Yes.
know whether it's factual or not, but the first essential for human beings is food, clothing, and shelter. We are being challenged concerning the source of food. Those that worked on farms, they have hid. They left the farms and they hid for fear that they would be kidnapped, put in a detention center, and sent to another country, separating them from their wives, their children, whatever. So the fields are sitting empty. The food is rotting in the fields. The cows are not being milked. The cattle is not being properly looked after. These are huge jobs. And this is our food source. Now, I'm only thinking from their frame of thinking. How do we replace this cheap labor? The Constitution outlaws slavery except for a convicted felon. The United States has the largest population of people in prison than any other country. And there is a private investment firms that have invested in the penal system.
Mm-hmm.
It's about money. So I don't put it past this regime to take the slaves that are locked up by the thousands and put them to work in the fields of the produce and cattle. There's that's I'll stop right there. But that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, and you're not the only one that's looking at these kinds of events and the potential for certain moves to be made uh, by the governmental entities because they have been going on. I just recently looked at this judge who was found to be sending youth offenders to these prisons, to these institutions, uh, to help those investors in these private prisons to make money. And he was found out, and he's in jail now. He was a judge, and he was sending young people, young youth offenders, to these private prisons, condemning them to a life of imprisonment uh, for the profit for he was being paid. So I'm going to conclude there. Any other comments? Uh, we hope to join you next Friday, pardon me, Thursday, same time, for more of Not Just Talk. We're going to close out with uh, a supplication, a prayer to Almighty God, asking His help. Oh Allah, guide us among those you've guided aright. Save us among those you save. Bless us in whatever you give us, and deliver us from the harm that you judge. You judge, and none can judge against you, and those whom you befriend are not disgraced. Ameen. Thank you, dear audience. We appreciate your joining us, your support, and we invite you to join us next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Right.
Okay.
Be safe. Holla, please. Assalamualaikum.
It was me.